Welcome to LOA Today. I'm Walt Thiessen here with life coach Monique Scott, and this is your daily dose of happy. We're so happy you decided to join us today, and Monique is doing the LOA Today circuit this week. This is her second of 3 shows.
Right. I'll be right back here again tomorrow.
You'll be back again tomorrow, and that's good. We're also doing a little bit of an experiment today. We're going to be experimenting with another platform fairly soon. I'm still trying to work out some bugs there, but in the meantime, we're going to be live streaming to a Facebook group today, which is the Law of Attraction Changed My Life group, which I've gotten permission in the past to send to, and we're going to start doing it again. So if you were a past listener on this group, feel free to jump in, and we'll be glad to incorporate what you have to say and what we're talking about. But I'm hoping with this new platform that I was telling you about, Monique, I know you've tried it out. You've worked with it, StreamYard.
Yeah.
They allow us to go to multiple places. And the only thing that's holding me back is this screen feature that allows the person who's talking to be the featured person on the screen. Right. Zoom has that. Blue Jeans has. Most everybody has access to StreamYard. I don't quite understand that one.
I guess they say we give you so much other good stuff. You don't need that.
I guess, yeah. But I want abundance.
Right. That's what we're all about.
And I was telling them that today too, and they were agreeing with me. So, all we got to do is get their programmers to agree. But, one step at a time.
Right.
But anyway, I figured today we had a few things to go over that we were kind of touching on before. First and foremost, we got an email about something we talked about, I think it was last week. Melissa wrote in, and I neglected to bring it up when you were here on Monday, so I'm glad I hung on to it here. But she wanted to know, you mentioned a YouTube channel about manifestation success stories. Do you remember that?
Oh, yeah.
And she wants to know, what is it? Where is it?
Oh, sure. I'm happy to, well, first of all, thank you so much for the email. Alyssa, right? It's Alyssa?
Melissa.
Oh, Melissa. Okay.
Right.
So the YouTube channel that I'm talking about is called Mind, Body, Spirit. And if I'm not mistaken, I think Suyash just spells it all one word, Mind, Body, Spirit.
Okay.
And again, his name is Suyash. He's an Indian guy. And that's the whole crux of his YouTube channel. It's nothing but manifestation stories, people who have written him from around the world with anything you can think of, Walt, from jobs to moving to traveling to manifestating homes, even kids, right? Mm-hmm. Marriages, specific persons, anything you can think of. It's my all-time favorite because whenever I'm feeling kind of low, and I mean, even though I'm a manifestation and mindset coach, Walt, I am human, right?
That's what I've been led to believe, yes. I mean, you seem like Superwoman at times, but, I can understand.
Don't believe the hype, okay? I'm totally human. I'm totally human. And so even when I have my days, Melissa, when I'm not feeling the best, right? And I need to raise my vibration, does it every time. Walt, I've even saved some of his videos, and I have just a private YouTube list that I kind of created for myself of nothing but my favorite ones from his channel. I've been probably listening to them, I don't know, 2 years easily, 2.5 years. Okay. I think he's had his channel like about 4 though.
Yeah, very cool. And I'm going to have to check that one out myself too, because I've had a few projects in mind that would have been helped by having manifestation stories. And I'm thinking, maybe I can tie something in with what he does. So yeah, good stuff. So thank you, Melissa, for sending that question in.
Yeah, thank you.
You just gave me information, so I appreciate it as well.
Oh, yeah.
Really
I love it.
Now, we also, I believe last week, we had a couple of ideas to carry on talking about this week. And the notes that I have, first of all, was to talk about the term you use, which is radical belief, which is very, very similar to Cindy Chavez, by the way. She has the term radical responsibility. So really very much
I like
in the same ballpark.
I like that too.
Yeah. And then we were going to talk about selling as an analogy for limiting beliefs and ceilings. And I'm not quite sure why we were talking about that, but, it's in the notes, so there it is.
Yeah, we'll just run with it, right?
So let's start with radical belief. Let's define for our audience, what is that as you understand it, and why is it so important?
So radical belief to me, in my opinion, is what I call childlike faith. And I think I talked about this maybe Monday or maybe last week,
Yeah.
but it's when we have the faith that God, the universe, source, energy, whatever you call he, she, or it, right? When you just have this belief that it's going to happen, that you're going to have your manifestation, that God is going to work with you, you're going to co-create with the universe in order to make your manifestation come true. But the key is to have radical belief, meaning I don't care what I see in the natural. I don't care what I see in the physical, in my reality. I'm going to believe no matter what, just like children do, no matter what. They ask for a bike, they want a bike, they're expecting a bike, and they usually get a bike, right? They have radical belief that mom and dad is going to get the bike for Christmas or whatever that they wanted. So
unless dad happens to be Louis D'Souza. No, I'm serious, because what he taught his daughters was how to be their own manifestors. And They actually manifested bikes without mommy and daddy.
Oh, kind of like Joe Dispenza does with his children. Okay, great.
Yeah.
Well, unless you're Joe and Louis, okay?
Well, Louis will tell you he's not any more special than anybody else. Anybody can do it.
Right.
But it's a great story, actually. His eldest daughter, the youngest daughter, I think, is just coming to the age where she might be interested in a bicycle. The eldest daughter, I'm guessing 11 or 12, something like that.
Okay.
I can't remember exactly how old she is, but she was able to manifest 2 bicycles from 2 different sources within about a 2-month period.
You go, girl. That's my kind of girl right there.
I mean, that's pretty cool.
Yeah,
it's really cool, So it doesn't have to be through mom and dad, I guess, what the point is.
No, but to your point, she had radical belief. She had that childlike faith that I'm talking about, right? Because we talked about that on Monday, how children have less of a resistance because they don't have so much stuff built up over the years to kind of say, hey, that might not happen, right?
Yeah, and that childlike belief it's easier to do when you're younger. Mm-hmm. It's harder to do when you're older, but that doesn't mean we can't do it when we're older, right?
Exactly.
But because it's a little bit tougher, what do you recommend for people who are older and saying, I don't really feel all that good because I got all this stuff built up over the years?
Well, the thing I always ask them is maybe they don't consider it manifestation, but for my people who have, like me, a Christian background, I will often say, well, what about there's a time that you prayed for something or you asked God, I don't know, to pay a bill or whatever it was, right? And it happened. And they always say yes, because almost everybody has something, right?
Right.
And I said, always think of that. If that's the only thing you can draw on to believe that your manifestation is going to come to fruition, then draw on that. Because you had to believe that God was going to do it. You prayed to him, you asked for it, or you were manifesting, the money to pay the bill, and it got done. So that's what I always recommend. I don't try to make it super woo-woo, right? Mm-hmm. Just pretty straightforward. If you've ever asked God for anything and he's done it, and it's usually more than one thing, right? Draw on that. And that's literally you manifesting and just co-creating your reality with God.
Do you ever suggest to a client or to someone you're trying to help with this to remember what it was like to be a young child asking for something, or even just a young child imagining something, just playing and being and kind of returning to that imaginative state as a way to get into the right asking space?
No, I haven't. But you know what? I'm gonna borrow that idea and I'm gonna keep it.
Okay.
Right? I'm not stealing it. I'm just borrowing it. Right?
Are you gonna return it? Oh, okay.
Later. But thanks. Well, I like that idea a lot because if somebody, you're right, if somebody can imagine or, kind of put themselves back in time as you were, right? Mm-hmm. And to think back to that time, it's a little bit easier, right?
It is. It's easier. And it's also, it's a strange thing because when you're a kid, I don't want to use the term black and white because that has a different meaning, but it's almost like it's black and white. Like it's clearly that you're imagining or you're not imagining. You're playing or you're not playing. There's never a gray area, right? So when the kid starts playing about anything, playing that he or she is an astronaut, or he or she is, a firefighter or a nurse, or, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter that the fire engine is a crate. In their minds, they are living it. It's a real fire engine. Yeah. And that's really the state you're talking about. That's where that radical belief is in there, because sure, they know it's a box, but that's not what they're thinking about it as.
Right. No, they're not. And I'm so glad that you brought that up, because that's usually the analogy that I use, or the example that I use when I'm teaching my clients about acting as if.
Mm-hmm.
Because a lot of people say, oh, I can't act as if. Well, you did when you were a child. You make believe. My cousin used to like to play husband and wife all the time. And somehow I was always the husband, because she would like to put the towel on her head for like the veil thingy. That was like her favorite part, right? I never get to be the husband, but that's neither here nor there. But we were acting as if, right?
Yeah.
We make believe.
That make believe is, well, let me turn it into a question rather than making it a statement.
Okay.
Isn't that make believe the foundation of a happy childhood?
I think that it is. I think that it is, because I had a really, really great childhood. And as a kid, I was pretty imaginative. Now that I think about it, and it's probably, can't speak today. It's probably.
Sometimes the tongue takes a while to show up. That's all there is to it.
Right. So that's probably why now today as an adult, and I never really made the correlation until we're having this conversation, but it's really, really easy. I'm a creative visualization is super easy for me. Meditation, or to go into a deep meditative state, is really easy for me. I never really thought about it, putting two and two together, but yeah, when I was little, I think that was part of, having a happy foundation as a kid.
And I can imagine skeptics saying, well, with all the kids in the world who pretend that they're astronauts or firemen, how come they don't all turn into astronauts or firemen? I mean, doesn't that prove that the law of attraction isn't really working?
No. I pretended to be a husband, but I'm not.
So what went wrong?
Well, one, I'm a girl.
Hey, these days you can't even assume that,
This is true. Okay.
Right.
This is true. But I think, when it comes to, if someone were to ask that question, I think it comes down to some kids know that if they're, pretending to be a policeman or a nurse or a doctor or whatever, I think they already have this knowing that that's what they want to be. Mm-hmm. I didn't want to be a husband. I didn't even want to play it. So that wasn't going to manifest. But I think some kids know, and it manifests because they're focused on that from the very beginning, right? And then other kids, they grow up and they think, oh, you know what? That was cool, but I think I like this now. And, they get exposed to different things and we grow, right?
That's just it. And that's actually the statement I was going to make, but I didn't want to color what you were going to say, so that's why I didn't make the statement first. But my suggestion is that kids, as part of and this is true for adults too, by the way, anybody who plays is trying things out.
Yeah.
They aren't making final decisions.
Right.
They're trying things out. One of the coolest things I've ever seen, I was involved in the foundation of an alternative school.
Okay,
based on a school in Framingham, Massachusetts called the Sudbury Valley School. Mm-hmm. And some people may know about it. Abraham Hicks actually apparently knows about it. They endorsed the model, which is pretty unusual for them to endorse anything. But they endorsed the model mainly because the school is for and run by the kids. There's no adult enforced curricula. There are no required classes or anything. The kids literally just follow their noses all day long. It's kind of like unschooling on a schoolroom basis.
Oh, I love it.
Yeah. And really cool. One of the most fascinating things, and I helped to found a school based on that model in New Britain, Connecticut, that was open for, I guess, about 10, 11, 12 years, something like that. But one of the fascinating things about that model is watching how kids move from one game to the next, from one imaginative experience to the next. And it can be something that lasts 5 minutes, or it can be something that lasts a week, or maybe 2 weeks, or it can last 6 months. And you never know in advance which it's going to be.
Right.
But what you do know is that it's very likely most of them are going to be the 5-minute variety. Mm-hmm. And then they're going to find one they like, and they're going to keep doing it until they get tired of it, and then they'll go on to the next thing.
Right.
And when they have that freedom to just follow their noses, to just pursue what's the next really interesting thing for them to pursue, they can race through possibilities so that by the time a kid goes through 12 years of this kind of school, and that school has been around, the one in Massachusetts has been around since 1969, so a lot of people have gone through for a full 12 years. By the time they come through, they have a much, much better idea of what they want to do with their lives than the kids coming through the public school system have.
I can believe that.
Yeah.
I can believe that.
I came through public schools, and I can remember my own graduating class, and I'm pretty sure it's been true of all the other classes everywhere. Mm-hmm. It was at least half the population had no idea what they were going to do. They didn't even know what they wanted to go to college for, if they were going to go to college at all. They didn't even know what their majors were going to be.
That was me.
Okay. So you know what I'm talking about here.
Absolutely.
But
Absolutely.
The kids who come through a school where they're completely free to learn or do whatever it is they want to learn or do, they have a much higher likelihood of knowing what they want to do by the time they're ready to leave the school. And they don't even have, there are no tests, there are no grades, there's nothing like that. What they have kind of evolved over time is there's like a little, I don't know, rite of passage, I guess you might call it. The kid decides that he or she is ready to leave school at whatever age it is. And then they basically go through kind of the equivalent of a thesis. You know, if you're going for a master's or a PhD, you establish your thesis, and then you have to go through a thesis board that's reading your thesis and challenging you on it and so forth. The same kind of thing happens with this kind of a school model, but they aren't writing a thesis. They're just simply making their case for why they think they're ready to leave the school and go out to the world.
Wow.
And it's really fascinating to see how all that plays out. One of the things, this particular school, the one in Massachusetts, has collected a lot of data about the kids who have gone through the school over the last, 40, 50 years, I guess it is. And one of the key elements that has come through is that compared to kids who go through public school systems, kids who go through this kind of school are somewhere like 3 or 4 times more likely to become entrepreneurs. Yeah. And that makes sense when you think about it, because they've had time to try things out.
But you know what? Also, Walt, in that type of environment, they're not put into a box for their thinking either.
That's true.
And they're not criticized or discouraged from being creative and thinking about what it is that they want and changing it. You know, like you said, today they might be a policeman. Tomorrow they come to school, they're a fireman. In the next 5 minutes, they want to be a doctor or whatever. Mm-hmm. Perfectly okay. And I think that that's the way that it should be. But when you get into the public school system, the average public school system, right? It's all about conformity. It's all about checking the boxes, dotting your I's, crossing your T's, curling your Q's, doing what everybody else is doing, dressing like everyone else is dressing, that kind of stuff, right?
It's true. Yeah.
And it's
unfortunately,
like, in a way, it's almost like sort of like a competition because, in high school especially, it can be so cliquish, right? You got the popular kids, the nerds, the unpopular kid, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
But in that type of environment, the school that you're talking about, everybody is just free to be who they are without restriction.
Exactly.
And I think that's a beautiful thing for a creative mind.
Now, of course, it's a bit of a challenge for the parents who send the kids to that school because, what do you mean? There's no grades. How are they going to get into college? What are they going to do for a career if they aren't being tested and all that? Actually, interestingly enough, they have a very high percentage of students who go to college.
Nice. I love it.
One of the most fascinating and really encouraging and intriguing stories, there's a lot of stories that come out of that school. One of the best ones is the story of a young lady who graduated from the school, and she was trying to figure out what college she wanted to go to. She knew what she wanted to study, and I don't know what it was that she wanted to study, but she was clear about what she wanted to study.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the, I think it was one of the staff members, because they do have staff members. They don't, formally teach classes or anything, but they're available to, help kids out who want to be helped with stuff, that kind of thing. They're facilitators, basically. And I think one of the staff members was the one who suggested that she check out a school near where we live here it's in Middletown, Connecticut, called Wesleyan University. And so she went and checked it out with her mom, and she liked it. It was exactly what she was looking for. So she went to apply and found that the application period had already passed.
Oh.
But she had grown up in a Sudbury school where she could just pursue whatever she wanted to pursue. So she didn't know the meaning of no. She only knew go ahead, full steam ahead.
Right.
So they got home, and the next day she got on the phone and called the admissions department and said, I want to come to the school. And they said, well, we're so sorry, but the admissions period has passed, but you can, apply again next year. And so she hung up, and then the next day she called up and said, hi, I want to come to your school. And they said, well, like we said yesterday, we're really sorry, but the admissions period is passed. We would love to have you apply next time around. We have admissions, but we just can't take any more admissions this year. So the next day she calls up the school and says, I want to come to your school.
I love her.
And this went on for days. Finally, one day, the dean of admissions overheard the conversation and said, what's that all about? Oh, well, this girl keeps calling every day, but we keep calling her every day. The admissions period is closed. He says, bring her in here for an interview. But look, you don't have any time in your schedule. You're packed with interviews right now. Oh, we'll just fit her into 15 minutes somewhere.
Right.
So he fit her in for 15 minutes. She showed up with her mom. He brought her into his office for the 15-minute meeting. 45 minutes later, they come out of the office, arm in arm. He walks up to her mom and says, I hope your daughter decides to come to the school. She's exactly the kind of student we want here. And she did this without transcripts. She did this without grades. She did this without any of the usual stuff that you have coming out of the schools. And that's not an unusual story. That's a typical story.
Love it.
I mean, talk about law of attraction.
Yes. And also another thing I like to say, persistence pays.
It does. Yeah.
It really does.
And she didn't understand the idea of no. I mean, she did, obviously. You can't grow up in this world without knowing what no is. But she didn't allow no to hold her back.
That's that radical faith, right?
Mm-hmm.
To me, that's what she was exercising. She was like, I know, a radical belief. I know that I'm going to go to this school. I'm going to go to this school. I don't care what they say. I don't care what the lady keeps telling me every single day. This is a school I want to go to. And I love the fact that in her mind, everything is available to her. Nothing is off limits, which is what I love to talk about and teach my clients, that no matter what you want, nothing is off limits. While some people ask me, well, Monique, you're 50, you've never been married. Don't you think it's too late? Or are you worried about finding the right person? That kind of stuff. And I'm like, absolutely not. Why would I be worried about that? Last I checked, there's plenty of single men still left, right?
This is true.
Nobody wants to get married or remarried, right? Whatever. But I don't let that bother me. What they want to call as statistics, right? Especially since I'm a single Black woman as well. Mm-hmm. That matters not to God, or the universe or me. When I'm ready, I'll get married.
That's kind of unusual. I mean, let's be perfectly honest. Most people who are at the same stage of life that you're at are going to have a different reaction. They're going to have the fears that you don't have. So how do you attribute to the truth that you have rid yourself of these fears? Or maybe you never actually acquired them in the first place. I'm not really sure, but how do you do it that they don't?
Yeah, I had a client, really difficult to, I won't say change her mind. That's not my job.
Right.
But to get her to understand, kind of like what we were going back on Monday when we were talking about unprogramming or deprogramming, right? A lot of programming that you've gotten, kind of like what you're talking about from society and maybe church or whatever. And so for me, Walt, I never saw myself married. I never saw myself with children. I always saw myself as this single, rich woman just just, having the time of my life, traveling, doing whatever. That was never even a thought in my mind. It wasn't until, I don't know, in the last 3 or 4 years, I've actually thought about getting married. But even when I started thinking about, okay, maybe I want to settle down. And it's not even because I think, oh, I'm getting older or I'm lonely or I don't want to die alone, which is what a lot of people think too, right?
Mm-hmm. Sure.
None of those things come to mind. I just really think about it kind of like life, like this young lady, right? For the university, nothing is unavailable to me. When I'm ready, I can call it into existence. So when I'm ready, I'll meet my husband. I've already told God, I'll meet my husband, this year. I won't get married this year. I don't want to get married. I'm not ready for that yet, right? I have a few more things I want to accomplish, but when I do get married, I want to be more settled in my business so that I can have more time to put towards us, our relationship, right? Because right now I just don't think I would make a very good life partner with how ambitious I am, right? But to answer your question, it literally just never crosses my mind that I won't get married or that I won't find the partner that's for me. I know this sounds so childish, Walt, but I promise you, I'm so for real. I'm so sincere. It never crosses my mind that it won't happen.
And yet your clients must tell you the opposite, that it crosses their mind all the time. So what do you tell them?
Oh my gosh. It was like pulling teeth, and I still didn't get her completely convinced, right? And she'd be good for a little while, but then she'd go back to, well, I'm over 40 and I'd like to have children of my own someday. And I was like, it's not impossible. Just because, you are like me, I'm perimenopausal, I guess that's what they call it, like premenopause.
Right.
But female-wise, I'm still able to get pregnant and have children if I desired, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I was just trying to get across to her that just like you believe God for anything else, it literally doesn't matter how old you are, how long it's been, none of that matters. And if you take the Bible, which a lot of people do in a literal sense, I don't, but literally, right? Sarah was way beyond.
I was thinking about the story of Sarah. Yeah.
Yeah. Way beyond childbirth years. Her and Abraham, really, way beyond. And she had a child.
She did.
So, but we hear that kind of thing, maybe not a lot, but from time to time, you'll hear a 50-year-old. I've even heard of a 63-year-old, I think, had a baby.
Mm-hmm.
So it's possible. Anything is possible. I think it's just that people, because of the norm, right? What society says, what they choose to believe is their reality versus choosing to believe what can be their reality, right? I believe that they let all those kind of social constructs kind of dictate to them what's true for them or what's possible for them. I don't, because you and I both know we create our own reality, right?
That's right. Yeah.
So if that's the case, why won't I meet my husband this year and get married next year? The only reason I don't is because if I choose, I changed my mind, I don't want to.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But it's possible because God says it is.
By the way, I want to make a note that a listener, VRSK, said, I'm the first person who saw this video, so we want to give him credit, because he was the first one to see it. And we want to encourage people who are tuning into the live stream as we're recording. If you have anything you want to add or if you want to ask a question or whatever, by all means, include it. And I keep checking periodically to see if anybody's asking questions. So, by all means, do that.
Be a part of the conversation. We love it.
Absolutely. Yeah, it's a good thing. But so let's go back to the radical belief concept again and tie it into what we've been talking about.
Okay.
And by the way, the radical belief sounds very similar to Cindy Chavez's radical responsibility. The difference, I think, is pretty minimal. The way she explains it, and I'm probably going to misrepresent a little bit. So Cindy, if you're tuning in, forgive me. But radical responsibility is where you accept total responsibility for everything that happens in your life. Saying, yes, I attracted that. Yes, I played a role in it. Yes, I, in some way, led this thing to happen. Not that this suggests in any way that perpetrators don't exist, or that
Right.
other people aren't doing things that could harm you, and
Right.
that they aren't responsible for their own stuff. That doesn't mean that at all. Actually, it means that they're just as responsible as you are. We're
Absolutely.
all responsible for our own stuff. So it's I think it's just a different take on the same concept. The idea that we do have responsibility for everything we're attracting into our life, which is part of what the radical belief is. It's that total belief, isn't it? It's that 100% belief. I am in charge.
Yeah. And I am responsible. We
Hmm.
talked about that, I think maybe last week with my narcissistic ex-boyfriend,
Yeah,
right?
right.
On some level, I attracted not one, but two.
Two of them.
Right?
Hey,
Yes, two. I
you're, you're,
did.
you're an expert there.
Pretty much. But yeah, I take, as Cindy says, radical responsibility for that. But I also give myself grace to grow, right? So I'm not holding myself hostage and being all mean to myself. Oh my gosh, Monique, you're such an awful person. How in the world did you do that? Oh my God. You know what I mean? No, not at all.
By the way, Leo also posted awesome stuff, so we're resonating here, which is a good thing.
Yeah.
um, let's take this take us back to that school I was talking about.
Yeah.
Which it's an alternative kind of school, obviously, and it's very
Love it.
similar to what is often called unschooling, although it's done in a community environment rather than at home. So that's the real difference between the two concepts. But one of the cool things that comes out of that is you never really know when a kid's going to learn stuff, but they all learn. And I
Hmm.
wanted to bring that point out because there may be people tuning in who are shaking their heads and saying, yeah, but without to organize classes and being required to go to class and study certain stuff, and the teacher exposing you to things, and your grades and your transcripts and so forth, you're going to be behind when it comes to getting ahead in life after you leave that school. I mean, it sounds great and all that, and I just wanted to put people's minds at ease about all that, because first of all, what they found at the school that started it all, the Sudbury Valley School, they found that every child, without exception, by the age of 12, if they came in at age 6, as their first year, by the age of 12, they all knew how to read. And the interesting thing is the staff members half the time didn't know how they learned it.
Wow.
Yeah. I
Wow.
mean, one really cool story. This is a more extreme story. Most of the time they learn from each other. That's the
Hmm.
most common way. Sometimes they ask a staff member to teach them. Sometimes as a parent, sometimes they just learn it outside the school.
Hmm.
But sometimes they just don't have any clue where they learned it. It's just that the kid wanted it so badly, they learned it. And
Yeah.
the best story I knew, they had like 6 acres of property, and still have 6 acres of property. They've got a few buildings on the property,
Hmm.
and a lot of outside grounds, great for kids to go out and play. And they have a pond with a little bridge on the pond.
Oh.
And this one kid brought his fishing pole and he started fishing. Now, I don't think there are any fish in the pond. I could be wrong about that.
Right.
Maybe they stock it, but I don't think there are any fish. But he just wanted to go fishing every day. So
Hmm.
he did. He went fishing every day, all year long. So
Wow.
that by the time the next term came around, the father would come and say, look, I understand the concept, but all my kid did was just fish all year. And they'd say, you got to trust the model. You got to trust the way the system works. And so he did. This went on for years. The kid just went fishing every day
Wow.
until one day he approached a staff member and said, I want to learn how to use a computer. And the staff member, now this was not current. This is probably about 20 years ago. So
Hmm.
you had to know something about how computers worked. Maybe 30 years ago. You had to know something about how computers worked
Yeah.
in order to actually learn how to use it. They weren't the user-friendly devices we
Yeah.
have
Oh,
today.
trust me, I remember.
Exactly. Yeah. So, but I wanted to set the time frame so you understand that.
Hmm.
So the staff member said, well, that sounds great, but you understand you need to know some things. I mean, like you have to know how to read. You have to know how to write. And he says, well, I know how to read. I know how to write.
Hmm.
You do? When did you learn that? When I was fishing. Okay. Well, you also have to learn how to do math because you have to program your own programs. It's not like you can go buy programs off the shelf. That hasn't happened yet. So,
Right.
well, I know how to do math. You do? Where did you learn to do math? Well, I was fishing. They never figured out where he learned to read, where he learned to write, where he learned to do math. What they did figure out is that he ended up going to Hewlett Packard and getting hired and ended up as a vice president.
Shut Oh, wow. That's an amazing story. I love that.
It has law of attraction flowing through it.
All over it.
He wanted to have it, so he had it. And you can tell he had absolutely no doubts whatsoever. He didn't voice a single concern. He just wanted to learn how to use a computer. That was the only concern he had.
Yeah. He had radical belief.
He had radical belief. So that's what I think we're talking about when we say we need to learn from the kids.
Mm-hmm.
The kids can teach us how to do this stuff. They can teach us how to be
definitely.
conscious creators. Yeah. And it's true. The kids don't have the baggage that we have. We pick up more and more baggage as the years go on.
Oh,
We're
yeah.
very good at that.
Oh, yeah.
It's part of living in polarity and, the world of contrast. But we do. And so it can take more time, the older we get, to lay some of that baggage down. But that's why we can learn so much from the kids. Because they don't, it doesn't stick to them. They just go on to the next thing with full enthusiasm.
Why does that seem so hard for us as we get older?
Now, you just took the question right out of my mouth. I was going to ask you the exact question.
Yeah. Isn't that interesting, though?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's so interesting.
Well, I think the answer is partly that it's programmed. I mean, we pick up programming over time, and it's our subconscious mind that's being programmed. And as that programming happens, programming basically happens because we think about something. It's probably something that we were taught to think about, a teacher or a parent or a well-meaning adult or a boss or somebody said, well, you can't expect this to happen in life, or, don't set yourself up for disappointment, or, money doesn't grow on trees, or whatever it is. Like there's a bunch of stuff that we just pick up over time, and it gets repeated. And if you want to really make the programming stick, you repeat it over and over and over again. We have an entire society of people that are very willing to help us do exactly that. And so that's where the programming comes from.
Yeah.
Now, the cool thing is the subconscious mind is reprogrammable.
Thank goodness.
Yeah, right. Otherwise, we'd be in real trouble.
Oh, my gosh. Yes, thank goodness.
But it is reprogrammable. And it can be done. It's just that the kids haven't built up the programming yet. That's why it's so easy for them. Right? So with that understanding, now I think we're really realizing is as we get older, in order to manifest stuff as easily as a kid does, we just have to reprogram our subconscious minds.
Yes.
Now that means we have to change how and what we're paying attention to. Because if we keep watching the same television show over and over again, it's going to program our subconscious mind with what that television show is programming us. I heard that sigh.
You're just preaching. Oh my gosh. I literally want to say, preach, preacher. Yes.
But that's the way it works, isn't it?
That's really the way that it works.
Yeah.
And it's so interesting to me how a lot of people still have not grasped the reality of that, right? That everything that you bring into your awareness matters. That's why I do not own a TV. But for me personally, I don't really find anything on TV that's constructive for Monique.
You sound like me. Louise asked me, what do you want to watch this for eating dinner? And I say, I don't know.
Maybe like the History Channel or something.
Oh, we've tried all kinds of stuff. Sometimes we find something interesting, but
yeah, because literally I'm not an entertainment person. That's what it is. Mm-hmm. I don't need to be entertained. And for a lot of people, I think we can agree that television is usually a distraction from their life, right? They don't want to think about their life. They turn off from their life, unplug from their life. And I'm trying to do the opposite. I want to stay plugged into my life. I don't want to unplug, Mm-hmm. And I'm very conscious of what it is that I'm bringing into my awareness, because I know that is going to have what I'm looking for. It's going to have an effect on how I think, how I see the world, and ultimately what I do, that programming that you're talking about. And if I'm going to program my mind with anything, well, I want to program it with only good stuff, only things that matter. as far as I'm concerned, right? And for me, that's learning more and more about how the mind works, how to,
Mm,
work better with spirit. Those are the things that light my fire, right?
right. Yeah.
I
No,
could
that's
care
good.
less what Kim Kardashian and Kanye West are doing. I could care
I,
less.
I hear you.
I don't like to see anybody get divorced, but literally, what does
I,
that have to do with me?
I had to go look them up at one point because I didn't know who they were.
And then you thought, was this it? Was this what I was missing?
I'll never get that 5 minutes back.
Right. Exactly.
Uh,
So I completely understand how you feel.
by the way, talking about programming and talking about all the different sources of programming we get, Leo, who said this was awesome stuff, he followed up saying he's watching from Papua New Guinea. So look
Wow.
what technology is doing. We are reaching
Yeah. Hey,
around the
Leo.
world. Pretty exciting
Cool.
stuff. Let's talk about that programming stuff because I think that's pretty important. I imagine as a
Very
coach,
important.
that's something you probably deal with clients, trying to help them, first of all, to appreciate the importance of reprogramming, and then second of all, helping them to actually do it to, make the reprogramming happen. Do you have a particular way you help people, or is it just, customized person by person, or, how do you approach that?
No, I don't have it customized person by person. At first I did, but then I realized, you know what? The same things that worked for me basically works for everybody. So
Okay.
I just teach them what I did. And the very first foundational thing that I teach everyone is start being aware of what's in your awareness, right? Start paying attention to the conversations that you're having, the negative self-talk, and we all do the negative self-talk and they don't even think about it, right? Start thinking about what you're thinking about. That's the very first place that I start. Well, Monique, I love, I don't know, horror movies or vampire movies or whatever. And I'm not saying that you shouldn't, but what I am saying is start paying attention to how that is maybe programming your subconscious mind, why you are maybe fearful of a lot of things that maybe you shouldn't even be fearful of because you like to watch horror movies. Or my number one thing was the news. And I can be completely honest with you. Can I just share something with you guys?
I don't think there's going to be any problem with that, but you go right ahead.
So, since I've been here in Houston with my daughter, right?
Hmm.
Now coming from Fort Lauderdale, I can get on I-95 and go to Miami if I choose to, or West Palm Beach or wherever, right? If I choose to. But I can also just stay on the side streets, right?
Hmm.
Same thing here in Houston, but Houston is so big and spread out that and where we live is like almost Katy, that you almost need to get on the freeway. Walt, when I tell you, I am starting to have anxiety around getting on the freeway. And I had to stop and think about, why is that? Where is that coming from? I never felt like that before, right? And you know what I had to remember?
What's that?
Or when I lived in Atlanta for almost 20 years and I used to watch the news, you could not watch the news morning, afternoon, or evening without them telling you about at least 2 or 3 accidents on the freeway where people actually lost their lives.
Yeah.
And I can remember the very first thought I would always think is, oh my gosh, I bet those people, when they left the house that morning, they didn't think that they were going to die today. That's all I could think about, right?
Hmm. Hmm.
And so every time I'm on the freeway now out here in Houston, because remember, in Fort Lauderdale, I don't have to be, right?
This is true.
It's so beautiful. It's scenic driving for me everywhere. I don't even like the freeway because it's so beautiful, right?
Right. Sure.
Out here, I have to get on the freeway. So I cringe when my daughter tells me, oh, Mom, I want you to drive, even though she has a 2021 Honda, right? Brand new Honda Accord, and I love it. But still, I've been having to work with myself to deprogram that what naturally automatically has started to come to mind. And I'm looking around and I'm nervous and, the speed limit is like 70 and here I am doing 60 and I'm looking, you know what I mean?
People are flying past at 80.
Yeah. My daughter's looking at me like I'm crazy, right? Cause she's all of 75.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah. But see, that's what I'm talking about. I had to realize that anxiety that's starting to come up, I don't know why. Well, probably because now I'm on the freeway again, right? But it came from the programming for so many years of watching the news and hearing about so many accidents on the freeway.
And by the way, VR says he's watching from India, so we're definitely transglobal at this
Hey,
point. So let's talk about how to reprogram that. I mean, there's a great example. You just laid out a beautiful example of first of all, identifying that you knew what the source was. I half the time, I don't even know what the source is. Half the time I find myself just having to reprogram, like, I don't know where this came from, but by God, I need a new program in there. But you at least know what the source is.
yeah, I definitely know what the source
So how do
is.
you reprogram it?
So every time it's time for me to drive or I have to get on the freeway, I literally have to tell myself it was not just, I'm not saying trivializing the news like it was just a program, but I have to remind myself it was the news, right? That doesn't make it true, my reality for today. So when I'm getting on the freeway, I literally have to talk myself into relaxing. I literally talk myself through relaxing. It's okay, Monique. The car next to you is not getting any closer. They're staying in their lane, right? Literally. For maybe about the first 5 minutes. It's getting easier and easier where I have to do that less and less. So yeah, probably about down to 5 minutes, but before maybe about 25 minutes, I would have to do that for a while. So it's getting much, much better now. But yeah, it's just because, I was programmed to think every time I get on the freeway, there's going to be an accident. If it's not me, I'm going to see an accident. There's going to be an accident, right? So for me, it's literally just talking myself through that it's okay. That's not your reality. You're fine. See, the cars are just fine. Everybody's doing the speed. You know what I mean?
I do, yeah.
So that's what's been helping me.
I know that one thing that I try to do, I don't always pull it off. I don't always remember to do it. But when I do remember to do it, I do it. And that is, I try to get myself into a higher vibe state before I try to do anything like that.
Ooh, I like it.
And I say that from years of experience. You can see the white hair. From years of experience of having tried to make shifts like that without going high vibe and getting totally frustrated because I couldn't easily make the shift. But when I go high vibe, when I get myself into a good feeling place and then try to do some reprogramming, it's amazing how much more easily it sticks simply because I'm high vibe. So yeah, that's why I was curious to know if you incorporate that.
No, but I definitely was. You've got all kinds of good stuff today. For me to try. I love it. I love learning. I love trying new things.
Well, honestly, I got that from Abraham Hicks.
Really?
Yeah, it's one of the concepts they have taught numerous times. You can see it in the videos that are on YouTube and so forth. Is that if you try to vibrate low and make a change or even attract something, you're going to get something you don't really want because your vibration isn't matching what it is you're asking for.
This is true.
So that's why they keep saying the most important thing is to feel good no matter what you're doing, because then your vibration is going to match what it is that you're asking for. It's part of the whole concept of what they call the two-ended stick. Do you know that particular metaphor?
No.
The two-ended stick is where one end of the stick is the thing or the experience or the lifestyle or whatever that you want or desire. And the other end of the stick is the lack of that. And they usually point out that that's the true opposite. So often we think like the opposite of a relationship is being divorced or something like that.
Yeah.
But really the opposite of a relationship is a lack of a relationship.
Yes.
Lack is the direct opposite. Others can be kind of similar, maybe a little bit parallel, but direct opposite is lack. So the two-ended stick is thing and lack of thing at the two ends of the stick. And when you understand it and think about it that way, then you realize that when you're in a low vibe space and you're trying to attract the stick, the thing end of the stick, it doesn't work because the thing end of the stick is high vibe and you're feeling low vibe. That doesn't work. You have to be congruent with the thing that you're trying to attract, right? That's where that radical belief comes from that you're talking about.
Indeed.
Similarly, if you get yourself into a high vibe state, even without yet thinking about the thing that you really want, and then you apply yourself to the thing that you want, now you've established like vibration. And by establishing like vibration, now the thing end of the stick comes. So this is like, first of all, it's a great way of understanding how to apply law of attraction and make it really work in your life. But it's also a way of understanding why stuff doesn't show up. It doesn't show up because most of the time, you talked about the negative self-talk. Tell me if this sounds familiar, and I'm sure it does because you're a life coach, so you hear these kinds of stories all the time. Okay, I want to attract a beautiful woman into my life. All right, so I'm going to focus on it. I want this beautiful woman to come. Of course, she'll never really go for me. They never go for me. But, I want to attract this beautiful woman into my life. This is a waste of time. This isn't going to work. This never works out. Every time that I date somebody, I know it's going to be a disaster, but God, if you can just find some way to send it to me, I really want to have this beautiful woman. What is that story doing?
Negating the very thing that you say you want.
Exactly. So basically, I'm hoping that if I ask for a high vibe thing and then kind of sink back down to low vibe, the universe won't notice.
Right. It's amazing how many people are surprised, like you said, that it doesn't happen. And then see, when it doesn't happen, that just reinforces even more that negative self-talk. See, I knew it wasn't going to happen.
That's
I knew
right.
she wasn't going to go for me.
Exactly.
Right.
So what we're really, when you're talking about overcoming the negative self-talk, what we're really talking about is the lack end talk.
Mm-hmm.
We're trying to stop giving out the lack end energy, the lack end of the stick.
Yes. And it's really interesting to me how many people are, I don't even want to say naturally negative, but let me put it this way.
Well, we're conditioned to be negative, aren't we?
And, because I've always been an optimistic person, it literally does. I don't understand it.
Well, that's because you didn't allow yourself to be conditioned that way. Yeah, I mean, you already told me that. I remember the first time you told me the story of your father and how he was just this constantly optimistic, positive kind of guy. That was the programming you got from a primary parent.
And you know what, Walt? I swear to you, I never thought that I was programmed to be optimistic, but that would make the most sense.
Mm-hmm.
That would make the most sense because even when something doesn't go the way that I want it to, or when it seems like a negative situation, yes, of course, sometimes I get down, but I never think, oh my gosh, well, it's me. This is never going to turn around. This is awful, whatever. I'm never going to have another client. My business is going to completely go under.
Right.
I'm always thinking, okay, so this is a setback, or this is, maybe I don't have as many clients as I want in my coaching program this month, but it's going to turn around. And you have to turn it around, Monique. You have the ability to do it. Like I have to remind myself, hey, this is your reality. This is what you've created, but you can also turn it around. And then I'm like, yeah. And then I listen to Sue Yash's channel and I listen to people who have manifested a bunch of stuff. And then I'm like, yeah, I'm a manifesting beast.
I love it.
And off to the races I go, and I'm back on cloud nine again.
So you not only got some really good programming when you were a kid, but you ran with it. You could have abandoned it.
But you know what else I think, Walt? I think for a lot of people, when they get in that negative mind state or mindset, I think they feel good. And they may not admit that, but it feels good to kind of whine and complain. And you can always find someone to do it with you, right? Or to co-sign off on your negativity. And I think that there's a tiny part that enjoys that instead of recognizing what it is and immediately finding a way to turn that around. And that's why I always recommend that channel to all of my clients, no matter whether it's mindset or manifestation that we're working on, which my mindset program definitely has some woo-woo in it too. But I just want them to listen to something that's uplifting and listen to people who had situations where they also thought, oh my gosh, this is dang near impossible. I don't even see how this is going to happen, but I'm going to have this radical belief, right? I'm going to have this childlike faith that no matter what, it's going to happen. And it's usually just a couple months.
That's cool. That's very good.
But you have to decide.
Yeah, you do.
To be in that low vibration. And that's where I think a lot of people get kind of stuck.
And I'm glad that you mentioned that Mind, Body, Spirit YouTube group for the manifestation stories. I also want to put in a little plug for ours because here on the LOA Today podcast, we have the LOA Today app. And if you download the LOA Today app for any kind of smartphone, we have built into it a number of ebooks and courses, including an ebook called Real Success Stories of the Law of Attraction. That's actually the subtitle. The title is Your Daily Dose of Happy. And it's got 55 manifestation stories in it. So, yeah. So take advantage. Download it. It's all free. Plus, it gives you a nice, easy way to listen to all of our podcast episodes. The last 25, most recent 25 are always on there. So take advantage to download that.
Yes, and don't forget Melissa.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, well, that's the other thing, because it also provides a way for you to send in questions and comments and so forth. There are a couple forms that you can just fill in your stuff and send it in. And every time that I get something, I match it up with whichever co-host I'm doing that particular show with, because I'm doing this 5 days a week. You're doing it 3 days this week, but that's a little unusual for you. But I'm doing it 5 days a week, and I always match up the question. In fact, the form gives you the opportunity. Send us, I want Monique to answer this question, so I make sure it goes into my Monique file so Monique can answer it. But take advantage of the fact that that's also in the LOA Today app, and use it. Connect to us, talk to us, just like people are connecting to us on the live stream.
And maybe they might have a manifestation story that they want to share.
They just might. Yeah, that's a good idea. In fact, anyone who's listening in right now, or maybe listening to the replay, feel free to include a story in the comments.
We'd love to read it and share with everyone.
Absolutely. Yeah, good stuff. We got about 2 minutes left before we have to sign off. By the way, for those who are wondering where the beginning of the show was, on the Facebook page that we're on, we're live streaming today to the Law of Attraction Changed My Life group. And unfortunately, we had a little tech difficulty for the first 5 minutes. So that's why you came into the middle of the show when you first tuned into it. But we'll have that fixed next time around. But just for the last couple of minutes, okay, we've talked about the importance of reprogramming. We've talked about some ideas about how to reprogram. One last thought for somebody who's got big negative programming built up and they find themselves constantly being pulled back to it, even when they're trying to reprogram themselves. What do you tell them?
Oh, wow. Yeah. So that brings back, I won't call her name, but the lady about the husband kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
So the thing that I, always tell her is just what I said before. First of all, think about anything that God has done for you. Meditate on that. Also, listen to those manifestation stories as well. She said that helped her a lot.
Manifestation stories?
Yeah. The channel with Sue Yash, and now the LOA app, right?
LOA Today app. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
In fact, I'll for those who are in the Facebook group that we're beaming to today, I'll put a link into the comments in case anybody's interested. But yeah, absolutely. Both of those sources are good for manifestation stories. And you're right. There's something about listening to a story or hearing how somebody else did something that just kind of helps to build your own belief system, doesn't it?
Yeah, they don't realize it, but that really starts to help reprogram their mind around what's possible, because prior to, they don't think it's possible. But when you hear so many different stories across the board from, all types of people from around the world, then they start to understand, hey, this is possible for me too. And again, they don't really realize it, Walt, but in a sneaky way, I'm helping them to reprogram their mind and expand their awareness about what's really possible for them in their lives.
That's
so
cool.
That's a method to my madness.
There usually is. I found that out in the time that we've been doing these shows.
I'm not just mad, but there's a method to the madness.
There's a lot of method to your madness. Yeah, it's a really cool method, I have to say. So, okay, well, thank you very much. I'm looking forward to doing the next show with you tomorrow, because you're going to be sitting in for Dan Mangana and Alex King. So looking forward to do that show. Thank you to those who tuned into us on the Facebook group, Law of Attraction Changed My Life. Thanks especially to all of our hundreds of podcast listeners as well. Without you, we wouldn't have a podcast. We'll see you all next time here on LOA Today. Goodbye, everybody.
Bye.